Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webcast in partnership with our friends over at NCFE. Fantastic to have well over 1,000 of you joining us this afternoon for this very important webcast about the white paper, the Skills for Jobs white paper, lifelong learning for opportunity and growth. So delighted to have so many of you joining us. I trust that you can see me as well as hear me. We are also recording the session this afternoon, so this will be sent around in due course. Don't feel the need to make copious notes. Well, you can, of course, but the slides and also the recording of the entire session will be shared with you. You've also got a little questions box, as always, that you can type into. Quite a few of you already expressing a range of delight, joy, and general impressedness. Is that a word, impressedness? At the videos that you've just been watching, both the FE Week videos and the NCFE videos. I was very impressed too. They all look very slick, which is great. Like I say, you have a questions box. Please do use it. David appears to want me to get rid of my beard. So if you want to talk about that rather than the white paper, you're most welcome. I did try and shave my beard off, but my 5-year-old daughter, Jessica, wouldn't let me finish the job, which was a bit awkward, having half a beard shaved off. So it came off, but it's come back, and it's probably going to stay for the time being. So yeah, if you want to talk about rather talk about the beard, hashtag Nick's beard. No, but seriously, the session this afternoon is about the white paper. You'll see there is a hashtag for this afternoon. If you are a Twitter user, please do tweet your thoughts, comments, suggestions as well. Don't as well as using the questions box, using the hashtag FE white paper. You've got the delight of just hearing a bit from me to start with. I'm going to do now a little introductory session, just trying to cover off a little about the white paper in terms of what I think are the main elements that I think are worth, in the short space of time we have, covering. And then I'm going to be joined, and delighted to be joined by, probably in this order, David Hughes, Chief Executive Association of Colleges, Dr. Sue Pember from Holex, Jane Hickie, the Chief Executive of AELP, David Russell, the Chief Executive of the Education and Training Foundation, and last but certainly not least, David Gallagher, the Chief Executive of NCFE, our partner for the session this afternoon. So this is the white paper. As I say, I'm going to spend about the next 30 minutes or so just going through some of the key elements. But I wanted to do this first slide first around just quite how wide-ranging the white paper has ended up being. Bit of fun maybe, but just to kind of in terms of size of numbers, we know in our further education sector, every time there's a new funding rules document, the first thing we do is see if the page numbers have gone up or gone down, and what does it mean if it's got bigger or smaller. Well, this particular white paper, and I don't recall having a white paper for our sector since, oh gosh, I'm sure David Hughes will remind me later, about 2006, 2007 maybe, I think was the last white paper we had in this space, and we had 2 or 3 in the space of not many years. It's a very, very wide-ranging document. You can see here, I'm sure many of you have had an opportunity to have a look at the document itself. So we've got 6 chapters, which sounds kind of manageable, but within those chapters, we've got 32 very different kind of sections. What are described as policy decisions. We've got 34 of those that we listed across the 80 pages, which make up 156 paragraphs, 25,000 words, and somewhere between 140 and 160,000 characters, depending how you're going to count them. So strap yourself in. We're going to be here for about 16 hours as I walk you through page 1 to page 80. I jest. I'm going to actually just got a few slides now before we go to the round table, just to try and pull out for me, and I'm interested to hear, as I say, from the panelists what their thoughts are clearly, and from your opportunity for you listening in as well through the comment section, to see whether you agree with me, disagree with me, or have your own, I'm sure you do, your own view of which are the key elements. So what does the Secretary of State for Education think is the big theme? So in his introduction to the white paper, I've pulled out this particular paragraph and I've put in red what I believe is the strongest theme coming out of this 80-pager with more than 30 policy decisions within it. This white paper aims to, and this is the key bit, it's in red, strengthen links between employers and further education providers. And you'll note mostly throughout the document it refers to further education providers, but I think it's, in particular we are talking about, but not exclusively, we are talking about the role of the further education colleges in particular. Working with local colleges. And to move this on. Just trying to move this slide on. So next phase of, oh, how are we doing? Okay, can everyone hear me okay? I think my computer was trying to do something there. Can you hear me okay? Just confirm for me that we're okay. Yep, okay. I think my computer was trying to do something overly clever, but I hope that's resolved now. Just confirm for me that you can hear me okay. Okay, it looks like we are back. Apologies for that. Okay, yes, we are back. Apologies for that. I have both of my boys at home doing homeschooling, so there's a lot of drain on my Wi-Fi. So it's probably my end. I do apologise, but it sounds like I am back. So if I can just go back a slide. So here's the big theme. We're fine here. So as I say, big theme is around strengthening the links between employers, particularly colleges, but as it says here, further education providers. So repeat after me. This is the key point, and I'm glad that we had that little pause there so we could focus on the key point, probably of the entire white paper for me. I think, and my reading of this is that we are moving somewhat, it's certainly not new to be employer-led, but we are moving from a concept of employer ownership, which I think the government has realised they can't really give employers full ownership in the way that they perhaps were thinking back in the Richard reforms for apprenticeships and so on. And we're talking now about employer-led. And I know these are things we've all heard before, but I just want to try and pitch to you from the white paper why, you know, how it is this new document and the subsequent legislation is going to try and do things, speed things up, do things slightly differently. So first thing to say is we have a one-year funding commitment, and you'll notice from this section from the white paper, it refers to courses offered by providers will need to be tailored to meet the skills needs of businesses. So it's very much looking at how the courses and the qualifications, if there are qualifications, are delivered, are actually needed, wanted by employers, and giving employers even more a role, not just in terms of apprenticeships, in the say of the courses and that are run and the qualifications that are actually certificated. And then we get some money, and I thought I'd start with the money. So the capital funding, which will be very much linked to what it is that the employers think should be invested in at the colleges. Then we have a reference to the 16 to 19-year-old funding that we're aware of, some extra there. And then perhaps most importantly, this 375 million, not the original plan 600 million. It looks like it's being phased in slower for the National Skills Fund. And that's being badged now in kind of COVID kind of response to a plan for jobs, the 375 million to start delivering, amongst other things, the lifetime skills guarantee. And then there's a load of other stuff in the white paper as well. And I think this, in some ways, this particular line sums some of that up. We will need all our further education providers to be well managed, governed, and have the best quality teachers and lecturers. And lots of the policy decisions and things already in train are in relation to that, particularly around governance at colleges, for example, and general oversight of both colleges and the independent training providers and other providers, local authority providers, higher education providers, and others in our sector. And particularly interested to hear from David Russell at during the roundtable next from the Education and Training Foundation when it comes to the quality of, obviously, the quality of teachers and lecturers and the work that they're doing there. So what does this mean, employer-led? So I've referred to it here as that, is it the next phase to be like Germany? Because it does seem that Gavin Williamson is very interested in what happens in Germany, as often the Secretary of States are. He said just over a year ago at the Conservative Party conference that he wanted to beat Germany at the skills game. So this is quite interesting in terms of some genuine new things that we learned from the white paper. So 65 million strategic development fund, an SDF, to establish college business centres. FE reported the plan for college business centres a few months ago that was revealed through some job adverts that the Department for Education were putting out. So that's one to keep an eye on. Interestingly, the 65 million doesn't actually get a mention in the white paper, and we're trying to work out why that might be. But certainly the Department for Education told us that they've set aside 65 million to encourage employers and colleges to work together to establish these college business centres. And also, as part of that, and this is why the legislation, one of the reasons why legislation is needed, and when legislation is needed in this way, it explains why we have a white paper rather than just another policy document or another consultation. So this is a white paper because legislation is needed to get the chambers of commerce involved in the way that the government want them to be much more involved. This is something, again, FE Week reported a few months ago was the plan, much greater involvement of the chambers of commerce. And they will be creating these things that the white paper says will be called local skills improvement plans, or LSIP, maybe, LSIPs. And these will have a sort of statutory footing in law in some way. We're not quite sure yet what that means, but that's what the white paper says. And a little note from me there as well is one of the areas I think will be really interesting is how these local skills improvement plans will or won't agree or disagree with the plans already in the devolved areas, such as the London Skills Plan, for example, or the Skills for London plan, I should say, that the GLA produced, and in other areas, Manchester, Liverpool. Now we've got in the northeast, Newcastle, Cambridgeshire, Peterborough, and other devolved areas. So very interested to see what thoughts are there in terms of whether this is duplication or complementing in some areas of the country. How will that work? How will this work in devolved areas? And how will it work for national providers of education as well? Those colleges working across the country, those independent training providers working on a national level. This is, of course, just for England. So to give employers a central role as well in the designing of the qualifications, so that by 2030, virtually all of the qualifications will have been designed again by employers. And I think this will very much put the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education in the spotlight if they're not already, expanding their role, I suspect. But it does raise questions about the relationship between the IFA-TE or IFATE and Ofqual. And my understanding is that quite a lot of the original plans with the white paper was to try and resolve some of the oversight and responsibility between quite a number of these agencies. And I suspect that's still being worked on at the moment. There has been a reasonable amount of criticism that it's not always clear who's responsible for what, or where one agency is responsible, so might another. It's worth saying that the 65 million, as well as a lot of the funding numbers in here, are just for 1 year, for the financial year, as far as the government's concerned, and Treasury, which will be from April to the following March. Then we have a raft of reforms that are already in train. These are the ones to keep an eye on, I would suggest. Boot camps. These are the 12 to 16-week courses. A further 43 million after a small pilot of 8 million. A 43 million for the next financial year has been set aside. There is a tender taking place at the moment for this, national tender with a deadline of the 12th of February. If you look at the tender documents, you'll see it comes with a completely new funding formula, no use of the ILR, the Individualised Learner Record, at all. And so far, no sign of Ofsted. In fact, the Department for Education said they didn't need to use Ofsted at this stage, although I suspect they might rethink that. My biggest concern right now, for what it's worth, is the name. I think the name's boot camp is horrendous. Interested in your thoughts on this. My guess is it came out of number 10 back when the Prime Minister gave his speech in October or back end of September. And I can't find anyone that likes the name boot camp. And then we have the lifetime skills guarantee, which feels a lifetime ago when it was announced first. And that boils down to being an expansion of the existing first full level 3 entitlement that there is through the adult education budget. That's being extended to the new National Skills Fund for those aged 24 and over now, so it's extended to all age. Government has set aside £95 million from that just over 300 million we spoke about earlier for the plan for jobs for this financial year coming. But the key difference is that there's quite a limited number of eligible qualifications, and many sectors have no qualifications that are eligible because there's been an assessment of which qualifications have economic value. So, for example, at the moment, you won't find any eligible qualifications in hospitality, for example, and many other sectors, which is perhaps quite surprising. Like the boot camps, they're being funded from the new National Skills Fund, but we haven't really properly implemented that operationally yet. So the Education and Skills Funding agency is having to ring fence this funding for the lifetime skills guarantee at level 3 through the adult education budget as a temporary measure, which is something which is likely to be a little bit awkward and certainly not simple. I would expect there to be some tension between the devolved mayoral authorities' use of AEB and doing what they want with it, basically, which was the point of devolving it, and then the national government, including quite a level and sector-specific entitlement. They'll be giving the devolved areas a budget shortly, some for their share of this 95 million in their area, and I suspect there will be a bit of a to and fro between the devolved areas, like the GLA, for example, and the ESFA over adding in other qualifications that are not currently on this fairly limited list of around 400 at level 3. So then I thought I'd jump forward. There's lots and lots of things. I say over 30 things I could have mentioned, but most of them from the white paper we're already familiar with. Fascinating interview we did, Billy Camden, my reporter for FE Week, did with Gillian Keegan on the afternoon the white paper was published. So just to quote the skills minister, some of it has been announced before. I know a lot of you think, well, what's new, employer-led and so on. But I think she's got a good point about not being too obsessed about all the stuff that's been announced before. She says it's all part of the same strategy, some of which we've been working on to be able to start to get people ready to deliver it. All part of the same strategy, which is closing the skills gap, or we put, and this is the key bit, but in bold, employers at the centre. So we've got employer-led, employers at the centre of our qualifications, and working with FE colleges and local skills improvement plans to basically make sure that we bring the system together. So again, literally in her words, articulating the point I was making earlier, this is really about colleges in the main. It's really about bringing them and employers through by hook or by crook with 65 million of extra funding, capital funding as well, plenty of incentives, if I can call it that, cash incentives for the two of them to be working together much more closely than they already do. We also asked about this point about the 3-year spending settlement and would that have been more preferable? I think this was quite an interesting answer. The skills minister said, the fact is, I don't know, but I do know that trying to deliver a flexible, more modular approach with the lifelong learning entitlement, a level 3 entitlement, boot camps, institutes of technology and T-levels, that is a massive program in itself. I think we can agree she's not wrong there. And much of this, the level 3 entitlement, boot camps, institutes of technologies and T-levels in particular, are already live programs in many ways. If not piloted, they have actually been launched. She goes on, I feel there is a lot to deliver. Would I want more to deliver? Not necessarily. Sometimes there is a case of, well, if you argue for more stuff, but you can't spend it because you can't actually deliver it well, then that doesn't always end well. I think it's a really important point that the skills minister is making here to some extent as well, is that we have had problems in the FE sector before, adult education budget in particular. A number of providers have struggled for a variety of reasons, have struggled to use all that adult education budget, and we've had years where that's had to be given back, some of that to the Treasury. We've got the apprenticeship reforms at the moment, again, struggling to use that even before the impact of COVID, and money's had to be given back to the Treasury for that. So I think in many ways the Treasury is looking to our sector, the FE sector, with this 1-year spending review and saying, well, look, we'll try some of these things, over to you. Let's see how you get on with the next financial year. And that I feel is very much what's come over from the response that you see here from the skills minister. So what next? Well, slightly longer term plans, the thing that was mentioned, thing to look out for is this concept of a flexible lifelong loan entitlement. Not entirely sure how this is going to be completely different from the current arrangements that we have with the higher education institution loans combined with the advanced learner loans, both of which come through student finance. We may well see those merge. We may, I'm sure, hear a lot more about why further education doesn't have maintenance loans and should have, which we've been hearing a lot of, but still no change from government there. And we had heard that the government were looking and hoping to perhaps introduce some sort of a skills account-based system for these level 4 and 5 qualifications. But I think that's probably something that's put on the back burner at the moment, not least because of the IT system requirements that will be needed and the cost of that. So one to watch, certainly 2025 is not around the corner, And it looks like from the white paper they're now going to consult on how they might simplify the loan arrangements, particularly at level 4 and 5 between HE and FE. Also look out for a new funding consultation on the National Skills Fund. We do have boot camps already in train with a very different funding formula. I'm not using the ILR so far, not looking to use Ofsted. And I think you'll hear the Skills Minister start to talk a lot about simplification, which for some of you like me that have been in and around the FE policy sector for what feels like a lifetime, 15, 16 years now. Every 5 years or so, we go through a reform program on funding, and this is us heading into that reform program, and you'll hear simplification a lot, which is a great aspiration to have. I think the key difference this time is how is the government going to achieve a simplification agenda, whilst there is also devolved skills funding, where each devolved area can basically do what they want in any ways they want to. We produced a timeline to try and help you with understanding the white paper. So this is our FE Week little timeline going forward. You can see there we've tried to pull out what we think are kind of the key milestones, and we'll see whether the government achieve these ambitions in terms of when they might happen by. And it's a very moving picture, of course, and we had expected this white paper to be published a few months ago. And you'll see this goes all the way through to aligning those qualifications by 2030, so good 9 years away. So we've got immediate things happening at the moment, very important to keep an eye on, get involved in potentially with the boot camps, absolutely critical to the National Skills Fund. Certainly now that we've seen the demise of the National Retraining Scheme, that's very much been replaced by the National Skills Fund. So that's a very new area that we need as a sector. We need these boot camps to be successful, to prove to the Treasury that it was worth putting the extra funding in. We need the T-levels to be successful, another 600 million a year to prove that the reforms can be successful. And this level 3 entitlement, we really need to be successful. I'm quite concerned myself about the speed at which it's having to be implemented to spend this funding in the next financial year. I'm also concerned about the traineeship reforms actually at the moment, as far as the tripling is concerned, whether that funding is going to be spent by the end of January, since we've only just been told who have won the tenders for that. So there's a lot of pressure on the FE sector to actually deliver on these new programs right now, and then there is also a much longer term reform program that you will be consulted on, no doubt, by the department, I hope, very ambitious, generally very ambitious reform program, much of which was in train before the white paper with some additions. At FE Week, I trust that you are all subscribers to FE Week. We produced a 2-page pullout or a double-page printout. You can print on A3 or read it small enough on A4. We're going to reproduce this and share it with you after the webcast this afternoon. So this is this is just a little image on the screen. You're not going to try and read that, obviously, but we will reproduce this and send this out after the webcast, as I say. Just a little sort of poster to try and summarize some of the key points. Clearly not all 30 to 35 or so policy decisions that are in there, but as I say, much of those we already knew if you've been paying close attention before the white paper was published. So a little ahead of time, because I want to try and make sure that we give our panelists as much time as possible to discuss some of these matters. I'm going to invite David Hughes, Sue Pember, Jane Hickie, David Russell and David Gallagher to join us, perhaps in this particular order, if that's okay. So I think I might start with David Hughes, obviously very much at the centre of this particular white paper. I've seen you all over the airways, David, in the last few days, which has been fantastic. I'm sure you would agree to see the further education sector, even when obviously everyone's talking about schools, to still see some of the policies around that affect colleges and the broader sector discussed on national media. So David, perhaps an opportunity to say a few words from you with regard to the white paper and any other thoughts. We'll start with you if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because in 3 or 4 minutes, trying to summarise what I think of a white paper that's 80-odd pages long is not easy. I'm going to focus, therefore, on 3 really big issues, and I think Nick's given quite a lot of detail about the bits and bobs in it and the initiatives and some of the things that were already happening. I think I want to step back a little bit and think about the positioning this provides for the sector. I want to talk a little bit about the system, because I think actually when you look at the potential to join up some of these things, that's when it gets exciting. And then I want to look at a little bit about what's missing, because I think it's important to sort of think about that. When you talk about a white paper, it's really easy to undermine it and say it's all old hat, it's all old ideas, it's nothing new in it. I think actually I'm fed up with new ideas. I think we know what works. What I'm after is really good implementation in a systemic, strategic way. And therefore, actually, a lot of the stuff you've talked about, Nick, if it's done well, if it's done properly, if it's done in a kind of a holistic way, I think a lot of those things can make a really big difference. But I'm not convinced that's what's going to happen. I mean, that's what I want to happen. So in terms of positioning, I think a few thoughts on this. One is, it feels really good to have a white paper about FE, because there aren't very many white papers out there. There's certainly no other big policy development going on in education. So for the education department, this is a big deal, and it's about our sector. And that's what a lot of us have been campaigning and lobbying for and asking for years. So I'm, on that basis, I'm really pleased, big tick. Secondly, it's really good for us to be in the priority list of the centre of government. This isn't just a DfE white paper, it's a government white paper, and it's positioning us on 2 really fundamental commitments and priorities for the government. One is levelling up, or making sure people don't get left behind and places don't get left behind, regional inequalities, all that. That's a really good place to be, because that was a major part of the Conservatives' win in the election 13 months ago. And on the other, it's putting us right in the heart of economic growth and economic development. Now, I know lots of people don't like that because they want us to be in the sort of social inclusion, social mobility bit. But actually, my experience is, unless you're in that economic priority area, then the other stuff doesn't get a look in, So I'll come back to that in the missing bit. So we're in the heart of the government's priorities, and that's why there's loads of talk about, employers in the driving seat. I think it's all rhetorical flourish, I mean, there are a few employers who want to be in the driving seat. Quite a few want to be co-drivers, probably, rather than in the driving seat. Most actually want to be on the bus as passengers, getting the service they want, and particularly when it comes to SMEs. And I think my reading of it is this talks about partnership between colleges, because I think it is largely about colleges, not only colleges and employers, and I think that's really good news. So the positioning is really good on that. The third thing about positioning is, it's absolutely clear this is the government trying to spend less in universities and spend more in colleges. Now, there are all sorts of risks in that. You might not like it. I don't particularly like it, because I think we shouldn't be going out to spend less on universities. But actually, that's what they're doing. And it's just worth knowing that. We've resisted any kind of seduction about trying to get into that, and saying we want the right funding for colleges and universities and ITPs and adult ed and schools. But actually, that's what the government's doing. So positioning is really quite interesting. More interesting, I think, is when you try and think about this as a system, because so just in it's interesting, Nick, you talk about funding consultation. I don't think it is a funding consultation they want to do. It's a funding and accountability consultation, and I think that's why it's different, and that's why it's exciting. So if you read it, it talks quite a lot about, on the back of the local skills improvement plan, where priorities get set, allowing colleges and providers to deliver what the local priorities are and have less ring fencing of money. So what you need for that is a consultation on both the funding system and on the accountability system together, because we've not had that. So we've had a complete separation, I think, of those sorts of discussions. So I think that's pretty significant. And there's some very strong words about freedom to deliver to local learner and employer needs, which I think is really quite exciting. There's quite a lot in there about collaboration between colleges and other providers, between colleges and employers. I think that's the right kind of direction. So again, asking, I think, or requiring college leaders to step up as systems leaders, and I think that's quite exciting and quite new. But there's a lot missing. So the 4 things I've just finished on, because I haven't got much time and I've probably spoken too long, it underplays the wider adult education system completely. I know Sue will talk about that a lot. My hope is that because it talks a lot about progression and a lot about area and place, we can actually make sure the adult education budget, the shared prosperity fund that comes, don't miss that, and that they're part of the system. We have to keep fighting for the whole, not just this kind of level 3, 4, 5 obsession. Secondly, the links to DWP I think are incredibly weak. So, you know, no integration with Kickstart or Restart. The links to BEIS and the industrial strategy are all absent. So there's a big joining up we need to do between those at national level and at local level. There's really, I think, weak thinking around apprenticeships. So all of the problems around the apprenticeship program is ignored, and there's a little bit about apprenticeships, but where's the integration of apprenticeship thinking and policy with T-levels, with higher technical qualifications, with funding, with accountability? How does that all fit? How does it work? Well, there's a big absence of that. And then there's a big absence, I think, around funding rates and funding overall and investment, and we've got to use this as a platform for the spending review. And there's nothing in it about pay, which I think there would have been if it had been a 3-year spending review, because we were talking to them a lot about how do you get the funding through to colleges and providers so they can pay the right amount to recruit and retain people, particularly those with skills in the and experience in those sectors of the economy that are the most important. So overall, you know, I think there's loads of opportunity in there, and I've got a list of about 7 or 8 things where I think if you're a college, there's massive opportunity over the next 3 to 4 years. But the big question for me is, will it be seen as a system? Will it get implemented as a system? Will there be systems thinking in DFE? And can we work across government in a much more holistic way? But I'll leave it there.
Thanks, David. That's really interesting. I'm going to ask you a question on the spot, but it'll be the same question I ask everyone else. They just will get a bit more warning than you. If you were to rate this white paper out of 10, with 10 being the best and 1 being the least best, what number would you give it?
Look, I'd give it 8. I think there's a lot of opportunity in it. I don't think it's perfect. It doesn't cover everything. There's lots of areas for development, but there's a commitment to do that development work with us. And I've had 2 meetings this morning on aspects of the white paper that we've been talking about with officials, where they're starting to say, well, how do we do this? How do we make sure we get this right?
Okay, thank you. Speaking of officials or ex-officials, I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Susan Pember, who was, of course, for close to a decade, very senior director at the department, responsible for what today would have been essentially publishing this white paper. And you would have been in the department, Susan, presumably when we had all those white papers in the mid noughties. Let's hear your take on this now as the chief executive for Holex, which is, if those of you that don't know, represents primarily the adult education providers, particularly local authorities, specialist designated institutions and alike.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks, David. Yeah, it's quite interesting. I think I was led up to believe that this would be the panacea for all ill. I was hoping it was going to be the lifelong learning strategy, that thing that we've been loving, wanting for ages. And you know, last year there was 6 reviews and commissions and all coming up to the boil. The select committee, you know, said wonderful things about lifelong learning just before Christmas. And I thought, this is it. The FE white paper is going to be that flagship document, but it isn't, right? So on one hand, I was sort of disappointed, but then having read the content, you know, several times now, it's obvious to me government thinks there were some issues that they wish to solve. And that's why they've got those 4 headings. So they don't sort of believe employers are in the lead at the moment. So we're going to put employers in the lead. That's fine. I have no problem with that. You know, they don't think the systems are doing what they need to do, like over governance. So they're going to have more intervention and more traction. That's fine. They don't think we're doing enough collectively in that 4 and 5 space. So we got solutions over 4 and 5. And when you think of the white paper in that way, it's probably just what we needed at this time. So yes, it doesn't give me that lifelong learning narrative, but this white paper wouldn't have done that. It's not the right vehicle for it. this is a vehicle about, as David was pointing out, system change. And actually, they've got a lot of the real things that needs to happen. Funding definitely needs to be simplified. Yes, we need better career advice. Yes, there's a gap at 3, 4 and 5. But then I would say as a country, we've gone to a graduate system where all the sort of key vocational jobs you have to be a graduate to do. So we've jumped that. So overall, when you put yourself in that mindset, it's a good paper. It does what it does. It puts a new agenda for the future. It gives, you know, a lot of credence to colleges being in their community and doing the activity that they need to do. But also it gives enough there for adult education providers to say, hang on, there's definitely a role for us. You know, it talks about progression. It hasn't said it's going to consult on any of their funding mechanisms, so that gives them some confidence to go into next year. It talks a bit about the low level activity at level 1 and level 2, and we've got a consultation on it. The biggest problem I have with certain of these new initiatives is not the name. Actually, Nick, I quite like a boot camp, you know. You go to a boot camp to learn to cook bread these days. You go to a boot camp on the, you know, virtually to do this. You go to a boot camp, what have I got of this? Ceramics. You go to a boot camp to do most of the things in IT are taught through boot camps. So, you know, and when I talk to anybody under, sorry, I'm going to be really ageist now, but if you talk to anybody under the age of 35, they all seem to think boot camp is the way to learn. So I think we need to like move on from the name. It's about intensive provision over a short period of time that gives you new skills. And if we think about it that way, what I'm more perplexed and worried about is all these damn procurement systems. If this white paper is about trusting the provider base, let's just trust the provider base. Let's get things off the ground quickly. And if we do need to bring in new providers, let's bring them in maybe at a later date. And that's my biggest worry about the level 3 now coming up from April the 1st. That was my worry over traineeships and about boot camps. We need to say to the sector, we need to give them a green light and say, if you feel you can do this and you can offer a quality activity, just get on and do it. Or we're not gonna make those numbers that the Treasury is looking for. So overall, I actually think there's some brilliant things in here, actually. I didn't know I was going to use the word brilliant this morning. I definitely wouldn't have been in that headspace on Friday. I love the title, actually, you know, skills for jobs. I haven't actually met a learner that doesn't want to get a job out of something, even in that space of well-being and all the rest of it. What they really want is a better job. I love the title. And then lifelong learning for opportunity and growth. How can any of us think that that's not a great title? It's got opportunity in there, and that's for all, and it's got growth. And you can think of growth as an individual, or you can think of as growth as for productivity and for industry. So whoever thought the title should get real brownie points in the civil service, because it's a good one. And then the lifetime skills guarantee for level 3, great. We've been advocating that forever. Like to know more about maintenance. If we're going to have loans, I thought we did have an entitlement of 4 years worth of loan anyway, but if we are going to have loans, not grants, it's good to write it down so people will feel more assured of it. The commitment to literacy numeracy is fantastic, right? To revive that and put that into this white paper, and I understand that's in number 10's own document on skill, and for the levelling up agenda, that's even more brilliant. And the fact that ESOL is mentioned in that sentence, I mean, you can go back to like 2007 when ESOL was last mentioned in any sort of document, and that was really about co-funding and finding other ways to do it. So because it's there under that entitlement, that gives me hope for the future. I have no understanding about local skills improvement plans. That landscape is so muddled as we talk, you know. So, you know, I'm hoping that it all gets settled down. My action to everybody on this call really is that, you know, if you care about level 2, respond to the consultation that's not up now. If you care about level 2, respond to that. If you want to influence these local skills improvements, get in there and do your stuff locally. And lastly, on my lifelong learning strategy, that narrative, right? I've got to the point we don't need government to write it for us. We can write it collectively ourselves, and we can sign up to it collectively ourselves. And within this framework that government has now given us, we can deliver that lifelong learning strategy that we all believe that we need for this country. So that's my response, Nick. Thank you.
Thanks, thanks, Sue. I'll have to update my slide because I now have found one person in the sector, so far anyway, that likes the name boot camps for an entire funding stream for further education.
Not the entire funding stream, just for like one bit for the intensive stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be a big chunk of the National Skills Fund, isn't it? Out of 10?
Well, Friday I was 6 and now I'm 9.
I did a good sell on you, did I, with my introduction?
No, I sold it to myself in the presentation I just did at 9:30. Anyway.
Oh, very good. Okay, thank you, Sue. I'd now like to introduce Jane Hickie. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Jane, who has just been appointed as the permanent chief executive for the Association of Employment Learning Providers. Congratulations, Jane. I know you've been there for many years, but fantastic to have you at the helm in that permanent position. Over to you, really. What would you like to say on behalf of yourself and your members with regard to the white paper and what you've been hearing this morning?
Thank you, Nick. Can I do the boot camp bit first, because I don't like that. Because for me, I just listened to Sue describe boot camps in tapestry, boot camps in pottery. I go to boot camps at my gym; they're a killer. They just, I don't come out of those feeling like I want to do another one. So it has different connotations. So maybe I need to rethink the boot camps that I do. I suppose to begin, the AELP membership has welcomes the white paper. We see it, the fact that it is it's an outcomes focused approach, and working with employers is something that our AELP members really welcome. And I think probably pleasantly surprised by the tone and direction with its, consolidation on previous announcements. I think there are a couple of things in there that we would pick out, as a starting point. The employer-led element of it, the involvement of the local skills improvement plans. There's some confusion there. Level 2 and below is obviously an issue for us, and the Baker clause and the role of ITP. So I'm going to say the paper itself. We don't view it as largely about colleges. We see that it is talking about providers. It's talking about the FE sector generally, and that actually includes all providers. And it was really refreshing to see that the minister in her update to members last Friday said that now more than ever we need colleges and training providers. So that's a very big step in the right direction. On the employer-led element of it, welcome by ATP members or AELP members. We've got who have strong links, really strong links with employers and very solid employer networks. I think perhaps the paper is lacking, as you go through, in a reference to ITPs as well as colleges, and that sort of third leg of the stool tends to be missing. So, there needs to be a more explicit recognition, I think, of the kind of flexibility that ITPs can bring to this. They are responsive, they are innovative, they have spent years and years working with employers. So that role, I think, just needs to be brought out a bit more. But that's not a negative piece of feedback. That's just a presentation of fact. So we're not just there to fill the gaps. There are about 1,190 providers altogether in the independent sector. They've got a lot to bring and have been bringing a lot. So it's just a recognition of that and a pulling out of that, really. I kind of agree with Sue on the local skills improvement plans. So, we had a discussion about this in the membership when the paper came out last week. So what is it? What is that? Is it a role of influence, or is it one of more of control? So the kind of model that's used in devolution, where is the connection? What will be the interface with devolution? So we are very keen to see a bit more detail on that. And how it fits with the devolved areas. And I suppose it was surprising to see so little about it when you've got half of the 1.5 billion adult ed budget is devolved to MCAs and their role in managing the lifetime skills and the first level 3. So a bit more clarification there, and to pick up the point that Sue made as well. We recognise that there's a piece of work for us to do at a local level. So if this is going to be, if there's going to be chambers at a local level working on this, then there is a job for our members to do in raising their own profile. Level 2 and below, obviously, from our point of view, a noticeable absence of any real strategy here, which is disappointing when, consider if we're looking at, a paper which is addressing skills for life. Actually, we need to look at all levels. We need to provide people with an opportunity from the bottom up. And so a lot more there on level 2 would have been most welcome. The inclusion of the Baker clause, obviously, from my membership's point of view, really good thing, and the extension of that to year 7 to raise awareness of apprenticeships, there is a job to be done there to get schools involved in that agenda, but actually it's a very positive step to have it articulated there. And I think, just coming back to the role of ITPs, we think they got significant coverage, and like I said, welcomed by AELP members. But there is a job for us to do, I think, in raising profile and getting across a clear understanding of the variety of programs that ITPs get engaged in. And actually, I think there is a tendency to think about AELP as being about apprenticeships. Well, actually, there's a raft of delivery from AELP members, from study program to traineeships and the whole delivery of ESF programs. So that's, I guess that's a little bit on us to raise that profile. So I think overall ours is it's a positive paper. It's been, the membership has welcomed it. Any of the feedback that I've got from members is about, great to see independent training providers featured in it and getting so much coverage, and then the recognition of the work that we need to do to consolidate what's in there. So I think that's the overall view from AELP members, Nick.
Thank you, Jane. Really good to get that perspective. So the inevitable question then, I know what you'd give the name boot camps. I'm pretty sure that's not going to get a very high number. It certainly wouldn't from me either. But what number out of 10 would you give the white paper generally?
So I'm going to be making a guess for what my members would guess this one at. I think the AELP membership would give this an 8.5 out of 10. Oh,
right, okay. 8.5. We're doing decimal points. Excellent, good. Thank you for that, Jane. I'm sure we'll be hearing from you and Sue and David again, but before that, delighted to introduce David Russell. David is one of three Davids on the round table. So the second David being David Russell, the Chief Executive of the Education and Training Foundation.
Hi, David. I think we're having issues with Nick's Wi-Fi back in Greenwich. So if you want to get started with your views from the perspective of the Education Training Foundation, please.
Yeah, by all means. Thank you, Shane. So a bit like Sue, I think. When I first read this paper, I had a sort of mildly positive reaction. I thought, well, there's sensible ideas in it. I like the supportive tone. There's sort of no denigration of the sector and that sort of thing. But actually, when I reread it, I realised I'd underestimated it. And actually, I'm very enthusiastic about this paper now. We were promised a paper that would be revolutionary, but actually, it's a lot better than that. Because, as David said before, one of the last things we need is more of the permanent revolution that's dogged the sector for the last few decades. It's not revolutionary, and all the better for it. It's evolutionary. It hangs together really well as a paper. But for me, the thing that's best about it is it recognises really all the way through that the FE sector does what it does because of its people, and to have a whole chapter devoted to outstanding teaching really is the best I've seen from a government paper for really quite some time, in terms of understanding that this is a people business and it only does the great things it does because of the people who work in it. And that's not just in chapter 5 that I'm going to talk about for a second, about outstanding teaching. Actually, there's references throughout to this, just the kind of human aspects of the system, collaboration, the role of governors in colleges, support for remote education, all of that stuff. So a really positive sense of the government getting it in terms of, you know, the purpose of this is outstanding education and training. The people who do that, the teachers and all the other professionals, need to be at the centre of the system. So chapter 5 about outstanding teaching was really terrific in my view, because it doesn't talk about metrics and accountability and inspection and all these things. Instead, it talks about the right things. It talks about recruitment, it talks about initial training, it talks about development. And these are 3 of the 4 big things that you need to focus on for the profession. The missing one, of course, is reward. But again, as David flagged in his comments, I think reward would have been in there, but all the elements of kind of pay and significant elements of funding fell by the wayside when the spending review became a 1-year review. But it still leaves lots of great stuff. You know, that there's a commitment to a national recruitment campaign for FE teaching. I mean, people like Sue and I have been asking for this forever. You know, where's the big campaign that parallels the Get Into Teaching campaign? There's commitments to improving the quality of initial teacher training, not regulating, but just a real recognition that government has a responsibility to help improve the quality of the flow into the sector, to increase that. And that's very welcome, I think, and very sensible. And lots of specific things like building on the ETF's successful programme, Taking Teaching Further, all about getting experts from industry into our sector. And then new ideas like the Workforce Industry Exchange, and putting some investment into that. You know, it's one of the things that really works in terms of quality, is supporting those deep relationships between professionals in the sector and people in industry. And that's a real sign that when they talk about putting employers at the heart, it's not just about, you know, labour force planning or that sort of thing. It's actually about relationships and professionals working together. And we know there's plenty of evidence that that's what works. And other good signs as well, you know, for the first time in many years, a commitment to support the quality of the apprenticeships workforce, you know, which is absolutely terrific in terms of CPD and development, the new apprenticeships workforce development programme, and a commitment to much better data, workforce data, and, you know, a serious recognition that the FE workforce is not properly representative of the learners who benefit from FE, and the leadership of the FE sector is not properly representative in its diversity of the workforce either. So lots and lots of really terrific things in there from my perspective. 2 things missing. One I've already mentioned, which is about reward, retention, pay. The other thing that's missing for me is a real missed opportunity to link with the green agenda. You know, I'm one of the people that chooses to believe the Prime Minister is serious when he talks about green growth, sustainable development, and combating climate change. And actually, the FE system absolutely at the heart of changing our social and economic ability to respond to green growth. So I think that's a missed opportunity, but you know, we can still take that. So I'm really excited about it, actually.
Thank you, David, and I apologise. It's entirely the internet connection at my home, which is clearly creaking under the weight of homeschooling that's happening upstairs, as my children are definitely not on Roblox and are definitely tuning in to whichever live lesson they're meant to be tuning into. David, in your intro, which I'm not sure anyone heard, I did also make the point that, you know, there is a whole chapter, isn't there? And I do hope everyone has an opportunity to look at that. And as you say, fantastic that it looks like we might be getting a national campaign, but it would help as both you and the other David, not the one we're about to hear from, but David Hughes, talked about the lack of the long-term strategy around pay. Quite difficult to do a recruitment strategy without perhaps enough of an incentive. So maybe the right and the left hand can get together at the Treasury and fix that investment, long-term investment challenge. David, can you beat Sue on a 9?
No, I can't. I think she was being, there's kind of a rush of enthusiasm there. I'd give it a good 8, and you know, an 8 is a really good score for a government white paper. I'd give it an 8.
Okay, and of course you like, it's interesting actually, those David Hughes, Susan Pember, and David Russell have all worked within Whitehall. So to give it these the sort of scores with some of your ex-colleagues, I think is quite tremendous. And the Skills Minister, Gillian Keegan, was very complimentary of Keith Smith and the work he's done in this space as well. I know there's a lot of pressure on him. Gavin Williamson named him as essentially the author at a committee, someone we all know well. So I will make sure we feed back these scores to him. He'll be delighted. Right, definitely last but definitely not least, delighted to be joined by David Gallagher. David Gallagher is, of course, the Chief Executive for the awarding organisation NCFE, who is also the partner organisation for the webcast this afternoon. Thank you, David, for partnering with us, and really interested to hear your perspective from NCFE and the wider community within the awarding organisation sector.
Great, thanks, Nick. And yeah, very happy to partner. You know, it's a really important conversation because, as ever with these things, the devil's in the detail of the implementation, and we've all got a role to play in that. So I think, you know, bringing this conversation together at this point is really important. So I suppose I'll recognise the constraints first of all, and then I'll start with a positive and finish with a positive, and you can probably guess what's in the middle. So look, this paper comes at a time with massive constraint. I think that the way Gillian Keegan has responded to that question around would we have preferred a longer term settlement, it's a difficult one. You know, the government has got massive challenges. We've all got massive challenges. And of course, you know, with a comprehensive spending review with 3-year settlement, this likely would have looked very different. So I think in the circumstances and with the constraints, I understand, you know, why the paper is limited in some ways, but as colleagues have said, that there's still a lot to take from it. So the first massive highlight for me, and it feeds on from David Russell's points, is the further recognition of the central and I would say singularly the most important thing in the quality of education, the quality of experiences, quality of outcomes, and quality of progression opportunities, whether that's in career or life more generally, is our educators. You know, if we want a world-class system, if we want an inclusive, a fair, a transformational and inspiring system, we've got to have world-class educators. And so that recognition that we need more investment in our frontline workforce, existing workforce, retaining them, developing them, growing them, you know, re-enthusing, re-energizing and re-inspiring those who are already in the sector whilst attracting new talents is absolutely crucial. You know, if we do nothing else, we should do that. So I really applaud that recognition. And delighted, of course, that NCFE got a little mention, so I've got to think about that in our score as well, in terms of the work that we're doing in partnership with World Skills UK. So that's the first big highlight, and for me, I don't think we could talk about that too much because I think it's that important. So the bits in the middle, this first piece, I'm going to be a bit more controversial on this, around employer centricity. We've been talking about it for at least 20 years, possibly longer. That's just how long I've been in this sector. And for me, the reason I think we think it's so far away is because we're looking down the wrong end of the telescope. We seem to have this obsession that employers want to be in the centre of our system. In my 20 years experience, I'm yet to meet the employer that does want to be at the centre of our system. Employers want us to be at the centre of their business needs and really understanding what it takes to have the, you know, the knowledge, skills, the behaviours, the work attitudes, the work ethic that's going to meet their needs for now and for the future. So for me, it's not about putting employers in the centre of our system. It's about us being at the centre of business needs. And the reason I say we're looking through the wrong end of the telescope is because we have it already. Awarding organisations to build vocational and technical qualifications have to work with employers in the design, development and productisation of technical and vocational qualifications. You know, it's hardwired in, it's a mandatory aspect of what we do. We've elevated that massively through the development of T-levels, for example. So I think now we've set the benchmark as to how we should do that from a design and development point of view. But that, I mean, that applies right across awarding organisations. I see brilliant practice day in, day out. I think the missed opportunity for me is we then don't figure out how to embed those relationships, that labour market intelligence, those occupational and industry experts into the FE system. So there's a connection broken, and then colleges and providers have to start again and build up those relationships. But day in, day out, I see fantastic partnerships between colleges, ITPs, employers, local authorities, working with adult eds. Brilliant relationships are there already. I just think we need to figure out how to do it more efficiently, more effectively, more systematically, and in more of an integrated way. So the employer centricity piece frustrates me, and I don't think it's semantics. I think we are looking through the wrong end of the telescope, if I'm honest. The next piece this is just more of I suppose, a slight concern in terms of an undertone. So we've heard for a long time now that there's negativity around subcontracting relationships and partnerships, particularly between colleges and ITPs, but more broadly as well. We see brilliant practice all of the time where a specialist niche ITP or adult ed provider or community provider really understands a particular sectoral need, a particular local need, a particular learner demographics need, and colleges work with them in subcontracting arrangements sometimes to meet that local need. And we should be really proud of where those partnerships work well, and we should seek to do more of that. Now, I completely accept that there are other partnerships that maybe are a bit more transactional, maybe not as strategic, maybe, a college just struggles to do something, or an ITP, is trying to, commercially look at an opportunity. Of course, there are things that, as is true in any sector, in any business, things that we're less proud of. But for me, there are things that we should be very proud of. So I just worry about the undertone there that could be missed, baby with the bathwater is a concern. And then the final positive that I do want to finish on, I'm absolutely delighted to see this recognition of the importance of a lifetime of learning. The vast majority of us over the course of our career are going to have to invest in updating our skills to be current in the labour market, to be included in society. And that is absolutely crucial. So I think it's massively welcomed that's come through. My worry underneath that is that it still seems to come with debt for lots of people at the moment. And given where we're at as a society, as an economy, given families, communities are going to be struggling, the notion of taking on debt to update your skills is going to be tough for lots of people for the foreseeable. So I do think we need to come back around the argument around maintenance to support people to engage in a lifetime of learning, to mean that they can be included in the labour market and in society more broadly. So it's a real positive that the recognition is there, but I think we could and should do more once we've got an appropriate funding settlement. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, David. I hope everyone can hear me. My computer's been flashing at me that it doesn't like the Wi-Fi connection, but that looks good. I did catch all of that, David. It was interesting on the comments from people listening. It suddenly went very alive when you spoke about whether employers really want to be driving things. And we had a classic, about 6 or 7 jumping in, agreeing with you, and a classic one saying, to paraphrase someone from earlier, employers want to be in the passenger seat, involved, but not actually driving. I've got a feeling that reminds me of a cartoon we once did as well about Citroën after their Ofsted grade 4. And whether they really, in hindsight, wanted to take that level of responsibility when the day job is really making cars. I mean, you could come up with lots of metaphors and imagery in this space, couldn't you? Really?
The bus, Nick, that's what I said. They want to be on the bus because they want to be on the bus with loads of other SMEs. Because when it's SMEs, you want to actually work with lots of them together. So it's not a car; it's a massive bus, a Pantechnicon.
Anchor. David, score out of 10, please.
So, Nick, in true award and organisation capacity, I think we'll apply an algorithm and get back to you if that's all right.
Which is better, 1 or 9? I forget.
I don't know, Nick. I'll ask some of the technical experts.
I mean, I wouldn't live if I'd let you off the hook that easily. I need a score, please, out of 10.
Yeah, so I suppose where I'm at with this, Nick, I never like to fall into the trap of giving people a rating out of 10, even by proxy, really. So I'm going to decline that one. It's tough. It's tough, isn't it? Because the constraints that we've got means that we haven't got a landmark paper, I think is my honest response. I think if you judge it by how landmark it is or how radical it is, it severely falls down. But I completely agree with colleagues. Given the situation that we've got, the context that we're working with. I think the fact that we've given coherence to lots of things that are out there. Well, the government have given coherence, they've brought it together. It makes sense. There's nothing that I think any of us are wildly opposing. But the devil's in the detail with these things. So I would be slightly less generous than colleagues based on those two concerns, but not massively so.
All right, I'll write down 7. That's fine. So while we move on to talk about and delve into some other areas, those of you that are on the line, if we have about close to 1,600 of you tuning in at the moment. So my machine's about to go nuts. So apologies if you lose me, because I'm going to ask you to give me your scores out of 10, please, in the comments box. I'll just see them flash up, and I'll use my mathematical mind to arrive at the average, which will definitely be mathematically sound in every possible way. I know that David Hughes is quite keen on our research techniques over at FE Week, so we'll see how this one goes. Scores out on the doors, please, and then consider some questions for. So 10 is fabulous, and 1 is less than fabulous, and then anything in between is allowed, with decimal places if needed. So we've got an 8, a 6, a 6, a 7, a 7, an 8, a 5, an 8, a 7, a 7, an 8, an 8, 7, 7, 7, 6.5, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 5, 7, 8, 5 is the lowest so far. This is pretty good. 7, 8, 6 out of 10, 7, 8, 7, 7. I'm going to stop reading numbers now. Right,
yeah, stop, Nick. It's a bit tedious.
3 out of 10. So I would say we're looking at about an average about a 7.5 there, which is quite impressive, I think, given how cynical we all are as a sector. Good. Okay, I want to just, if I can, just try and tease out some more from some of you to start with around the employer-led stuff and how haven't we done all this before. We've had TECs, sector skills councils, UK commissions for employment and skills. I'm sure David and his colleagues in the awarding organisations have been having lots of fun over many years reforming their qualifications. We've had the Whitehead review. We've now got the T levels, which obviously NCFE is one of the very few awarding organisations leading the charge there. We've got the Institute for Apprenticeships already with all of their panels. They must have a lot of roundtables. What do we think's really going to be different here? I'll start with Jane Hickie, if that's okay, Jane. What do we think's? Why do we think it's going to work this time? How do we feel about this new, or is it so new, approach to employer engagement?
So just to pick up on a couple of points, Nick, that were made around employer engagement, I think a point that one of the points that David made is correct. And actually, AELP carried out a piece of research last year, Employers in the Driving Seat, which has said exactly that. What employers want is collaboration. They want to be part of a partnership. And so I would say that, you know, what's important here is employers, colleges and ITPs working together. I think that in terms of what might be different, I mean, the devil's going to be in the detail here on what the local skills improvement plans mean. And like I said earlier, is that influence or is it control? But I think from AELP members' point of view, this is something that they have been doing for many, many years. They're very well skilled in how to work with employers. They understand what it is employers want. So I think it's a recognition of that collaboration, which is the important thing, and then making sure that we work together in partnership, because at the end of the day, what we're responsible for is delivering quality for the learner.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jana. It's good to bring that point back to the focus on the beneficiaries as far as the learners in particular are concerned. We're running a live poll at the moment, thanks to my colleague Shane for doing this properly, as opposed to me shouting numbers down the webcast. So please, if you haven't already, I think nearly a lot of you, several hundred of you have already voted on that. So we'll give the results of that in a moment for the live poll. Why don't we try David Hughes? What makes you, or do you think that this will work where other strategies, not least because you used to be at the Learning and Skills Council, so we'll be very familiar with attempts at bringing employers and colleges together. What makes you think this, or do you think this will work going forward?
Well, as I said, I think if it's done systemically, I think it can. And I think there's a commitment to that. I think there's an understanding that actually it's partnership that works. So Jane's absolutely right. I think, you know, that where you see really good partnerships between employers and colleges and other providers, they work really, really well. What we need is more of that. And I think the government has sort of accepted that. A lot of the conversations we've been having with them about implementation are about that, kind of building on what works rather than trying to invent something new. So this isn't a white paper that says, let's just start afresh and do something really exciting. It is actually saying, let's build on what works. And I think that's really a really powerful part of it. And the ethos, I think, of it is that the discussions are all about that. And the other big reason, one of the quotes I really like that we can use to hold DfE's feet to the fire is, we'll ensure that good providers have more autonomy to use funding how they see fit in order to meet the needs of learners and the skills needs of local employers. If the white paper does anything to deliver on that, it will be a major, major step forward, because the skills needs in Newcastle are different to Plymouth, different to Gateshead, different to, you know, all over the country. It's going to be unique to that area. And the constraints on every type of provider on what they're allowed to do are enormous, you know. So if actually you can start saying, we've sat down with our employer organisations locally and we've come up with, we need to do, I don't know, a module around air source heat pumps, and that's going to be funded fully, and we can go out to businesses and offer that. That'd be a major step forward, you know. And you can't do that at the moment because you're not allowed to.
Yeah, but I mean, just to look at it from another perspective, though, David. I mean, does the current direction of travel operationally, in reality, not suggest we're heading in the opposite direction? I mean, you'll remember the days of the summary statements of activity and the obsession with full level 2s and the obsession with full level 3s. Now we've got money being pumped into what's referred to as a lifetime skills guarantee that's only for first full level 3s and limited to only around half of the economic sectors out there. I mean, operationally, it looks like we're taking flexibility away, aren't we?
Well, no, certainly they're a bit schizophrenic at the moment, aren't they? In that Whitehall loves to control. What the white paper says, though, is it's going to devolve not to MCAs or LEPs or, you know, skills advisory panels. They're going to actually essentially devolve down to local skills improvement plans, which are a joint role between colleges, other providers and employers. Now, that's quite exciting. How, you know, as David Gallagher said, devil in the detail, how it works, how it operates, who decides. But if it really truly does give you that local autonomy to deliver for the local labour market and the local lifelong learning needs, and it is both, that's really exciting.
You're very, very optimistic, David. That's great. I wonder what Susan Pember thinks in terms of whether Whitehall saying they're going to let people decide what they want to do will ever actually materialise, because I've never ultimately seen that. Susan, you'll remember the summary statements of activity and how colleges were being demanded to hit certain number of full level 2s, a certain number of full level 3s. That was, of course, under the Labour Party when we had the public service agreement targets. Aren't we heading back in that kind of direction with things like the
Yeah, I mean,
we've got this.
Sorry, Nick, to talk over you. There's two sides to this, isn't it? I mean, what we mustn't forget is that the new money is one thing, and that's been targeted via quite a controlled procurement methodology, unless they want to they want to agree the numbers and they want to monitor it from the centre of government. But we've still got the adult education budget, which needs to be flexed to be able to do more for those on the ground. And that's the bit that so yes, it's like a twin track, but to me is that they want to get the numbers out of the door for the level 3 entitlement as quick as possible, while at the same time they want to flex the local budgets. And you know, there are so many things you could do locally if the funding methodology just was tweaked a bit for you to do it. The methodology isn't wrong. It allows us to track students and student numbers. It allows us to do like the Leo comparisons, all that. It's not the way the ABA is set up. It's just too slow and lumpy and clunky at the moment and needs to be flexed. But the bit about employer involvement for me is that, you know, David Gallagher's heard me talk lots about the learner being the centre, because in the end, it is the learner that learns. Nobody else learns. You know, none of all of us are retraining. You know, we're all in jobs that we didn't know we were going to do, but no employer actually said, you know, you were going to do that, you were going to go to that boot camp, you're going to do that, and your mind's going to be opened. Yeah, that can't be done for somebody. That can only be done by the learner. So in the end, although we did talk about it, I think in 2013, about being learner centered. Everything should be about the learner, but the employer, and the employer has got the key to this. If you think all the new activities are going to have work experience in it, take T levels, there's a substantial amount of work experience. You know, take the apprenticeships, you know, it is a work-related activity. Take the programs for internships or any of the boot camp stuff. It involves the employer, and I think that is good. That the employer wants new employees, they open up their doors, they bring them in early, whether it's like called work experience, whether it's paid work, a day a week when they're learning. There's a real big job for employers to do there. And if we have to give them the idea that they're in the driving seat for them to open their doors for all this work experience, I'm all right with that. I can live with that. But we do need them to be there, you know, opening, like they said, their doors to let people, young people in and adults, to get that taster of work before they join that company. And that's the good bit of having employers in the driving seat.
Thank you. Before I bring in Jane to talk about whether, in terms of who's in the driving seat, perhaps, and more generally, whoever wants to come in on this point, whether the Chambers of Commerce are the right place to go. I know that a lot of Jane's members already work with Chambers of Commerce, but they're a pretty small outfit, and I wonder the extent to which they're up for playing such an important role in the new agenda going forward. Before I do that, I just want to give the results of the poll that my colleague Shane put on the screen. We had we had 59% of over 1,000 people. So whatever that particular number was, it was still a lot of people voting. Shane gave you not 10 options, he gave you 5 options, which has kind of helped to subcategorize that way. 1% said it was amazing, the white paper. I can't tell you what the it's just 1%, the system tells me, so I don't know how many people exactly that is, but 64% said it was good, 34% said it was fair, 1% said it was poor, and 0% said it was awful. So I think it's fair to say we're looking at around close to 2/3 thought it was good, with the remaining third pretty much saying it was fair. So yeah, I think that's pretty positive reaction and response to the white paper. Jane, Chambers of Commerce, and more generally to continue on the theme of employer ownership, is that the right place, Chamber of Commerce? What are your members telling you?
So there hasn't been the response from the membership has been, like I said, what is the relationship between the role of the members of the Chambers of Commerce in their localities, and then the LEPs and the devolved areas. So it's a muddled and confused map. So AELP members are not necessarily going to say this is a negative thing. It is about is what the local skills improvement. I find it hard to say that local skills improvement plans, is that about influence, and therefore is it going to be a consultation locally with employers, with providers, about what is needed, which is then proposed to the department? So is it influence in that way, or what is the level of control there? So is it as with the devolved areas where you've got control over the budget? So our members will want to talk to the chambers, they'll want to find out what the role is, and they'll want to play a part in that. They have existing relationship with the chambers, so it will be about how do we best make this work. And at the end of the day, you know, the majority of my members are their reason for being is to support learners and to support some of the most disadvantaged learners, and to try to get the best outcome from whatever this needs to be, because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. So I think it's not, there's no flood of negativity about it. It's just, what does this mean?
David Russell, you've been in and around Whitehall for some time. You've probably had to deal with your fair bit of overlap in terms of agency and responsibility and oversight and so on. What do you have a view in terms of the Chambers of Commerce and the broader kind of skills agenda? And are we clear who's leading whom here?
Yeah, I certainly have a view, Nick. My view is it really doesn't matter that much. The answer to your question was in your question. This has been tried many times in many different ways, and by and large, they all work to an extent. Colleges and other providers do what they do. They put on a blend of what local employers want and what learners want, and they try and balance the needs of adults and young people and employers and apprentices and all of that. And they will always do that, no matter what the precise mechanism is. I think that think of it like this. Imagine a provider is like a restaurant, and you can have an argument about, well, who gets to decide exactly what dishes this restaurant provides? Yeah, that matters. But what matters a lot more is the skills of the chef, the skills of the people that bring you the food, the ambience that you eat it in, and that is the skills and effectiveness of the workforce in the system, how well the environment is kept up, the capital investment, the ease of access, can disabled people get through the door? These are the things that really make a difference. The precise changes of the menu from week to week or month to month, kind of less important. And things like whether chambers is the right mechanism or not, really interesting to policymakers and policy watchers, not really very interesting to teachers or to learners, frankly.
Okay, thank you. Interesting, while we've been talking, someone from the Chamber of Commerce has messaged in. Obviously, they're keen not to be named, but I'm just going to read what they said because I think it is quite interesting. So they've said, and I quote, "Chambers of Commerce are independent organisations which are hugely varied in their business models." Bearing in mind, of course, there are lots of different local Chambers of Commerce. So they're hugely varied in their business models, staffing as well as their staffing levels and capacity to deliver what has seemingly been set out in the white paper. It's also important to recognise that chambers are already deeply embedded in their local skills landscapes, and the proposals could lead to duplication of the work which LEPs and combined authorities already do. We need detail urgently to understand the government's hopes and demands of chambers, and whether this is actually achievable across the country. I just thought that quite interesting perspective from a chamber themselves.
Nick, can I come in? I mean, I think I completely agree with what David said and Jane. I'd just add one thing. The real kind of the curate's egg, the bit that really matters about the local partnerships, in my view, is about how you get growth in sectors where the employers currently don't see the potential for growth. How do you get people to take skills seriously who aren't? Because the employers who are already engaged in the skills system are getting a good deal from whatever type of provider, whether it's a college, independent, adult ed, it doesn't matter. They're already getting that. The satisfaction levels are really high. They wouldn't be involved if it wasn't good. The real goal, though, is to find those sectors. I live in the East Midlands. The East Midlands is full of employers in that kind of low skills, low pay, low productivity equilibrium. They're surviving. They're doing all right. Actually, if we're going to be a better country economically, we need more employers like those to kind of go, actually, if we innovate, if we adopt new technology, if we have new business practice, if we invest in our staff, we will be able to go up the value chain, we'll be able to bring in more money, and we'll be able to pay people more. That's the bit that really matters in this, I think. That's the bit that we've never achieved as a system. And that's where the trailblazer idea of chambers, because that's all it is saying, actually, let's have a go. Would it be, almost like an experiment, trailblazer? Let's try to see whether it works. We've got a meeting with British Chambers of Commerce and some of the local chamber chief execs next week to sort of say, well, actually, what do we want from that partnership? How would it work? What could it achieve?
It's quite interesting. A few people have commented saying, what's the deadline for the white paper consultation? Doesn't quite work like that, unfortunately. This isn't officially a consultation, but there will be lots of things spinning out of it, including formal consultations. So please do keep an eye on FE Week, which, as always, will be first to report and share opinions, and do get in touch if you want to share your own opinions through the newspaper FE Week. David Gallagher, I'm going to give you the honour of the final say as far as the panel's concerned. I did have a question about qualification reform, but it's entirely in your domain as to what it is you'd like to finish on.
Yeah, well, I was expecting a very tough question dressed up as honour, Nick, actually, so that's very kind of you to leave that slightly open. So, I mean, look, two things I'll finish on. Qualification reform, supposed to simplify the points, we probably have too many qualifications in the system as it stands. So we do need to, you know, absolutely as a wider system, do some housekeeping around that to make sure that there's an appropriate level of choice. But it's really important to stress that across our tertiary education system, which is complex by nature because there is a complex set of needs out there, we need to make sure that there is a mix, a choice, a balance of provision that best meet, as Sue said it best, the needs of learners. First and foremost, we've got to make sure that whatever we decide, you know, is the appropriate, you know, menu in the restaurant, so to speak, as David says, that it meets the needs of a very, very, very diverse group of learners, or prospective learners even, and over a lifetime of learning. And I don't think that ever should collapse down to less than 10 choices, for example. So that's the important thing. But the final word that I wanted to have really is that we often think that we failed at something in our tertiary education system. You know, it's almost that, well, what have we got wrong? What have we failed at? And therefore we need, you know, we need a white paper, we need reform, we need continuous improvement. We need to evolve and adapt more rapidly than ever with the context that we've got. But we really need to start recognising what we did well as a system and stop looking in the backyard of other countries. We're becoming the voyeur of skills. We do some things exceptionally well in this country. We need to recognise it. We need to celebrate it. We need to applaud the efforts of educators, leaders, and everyone in between in this sector that do a phenomenal job. And I don't just know that in my heart. I know it in my head. I see it day in, day out in the work that I get to do. But the one thing that I think we should do over the next year is really shift how we centre the purpose of tertiary education. And for me, it's about making sure that everyone that comes through our doors, whether physically or virtually now, leaves with a strong sense of self-efficacy, self-confidence, self-awareness, and you know what, some technical skills that are going to be valued in the labour market, or whatever other context those skills might be applied. Until we get that bit right and we centre tertiary education slightly differently to where we're centred now, we're never going to meet the needs of our economy or our labour market. If we do that, we've got a really good chance.
Thank you, David. Thanks very much for your contribution. Thank you to everybody on the panel, David Hughes, Dr. Sue Pember, Jane Hickie, David Gallagher again, David Russell, and all of you that have been listening in. Thank you to my colleague, Shane Mann, who has been managing the arrangements and technology and the videos and all of the things that bring this together. Really interested in keeping, as always, the debate going. We look to do some more of these as the white paper evolves with other people on the panel. Do get in touch if you'd like to join a panel like this to discuss your thoughts. Maybe there's a particular area of the white paper that we haven't touched on, and there are lots because there are so many areas of the white paper that we didn't touch on, didn't have the time to, that we could run a whole session like this on and delve into. So please do think about that and get in touch. Use the hashtag FE white paper. And on that note, thank you again for joining us. Thank you to the panel, and look forward to hearing all from you again very soon. Bye-bye.